And so tell me a little bit about what it's like, what are the challenges and maybe how you've overcome some of those. Like when you're rolling training out, management training to 18 or 48 countries, what are the kinds of things you have to check off on your checklist? What do you have to do?
Well, there are a number of sort of different areas you have to think about. You need to take into account the cultures in which we work, particularly like just thinking of leadership and management training. There are very different sort of cultural norms around what
Mm,
it means to be a manager, what it means to be someone's boss in some of the places that we work, and you need to find out what those are and try to take that into account. When you're designing your materials, you want everyone to feel like you're speaking to them, and so that means you need to understand where they're at. And then just on the technical side, there are a lot of challenges. Language, that's a challenge. You need to be able to manage translation and having multiple language versions of everything.
mhm,
And then connectivity also in the places we work is a really
mm,
big challenge. Internet connectivity, in some cases electrical, just being connected to electricity
mm.
is not necessarily a given in some of the places we work. So while we do, I think, make pretty good use of the technology that we have at our disposal, we also at the same time can never trust that that will necessarily be available to everyone. You always need to have kind of an offline, a PDF, PowerPoint, something that can be printed
Okay,
for the
that makes
situation.
sense. I'm curious about the cultural challenges, well, language as well, but you've had three people. How do you have confidence that you're rolling out something that is culturally sensitive? What are the kinds of things you do? Who do you engage with to help you with that? Because you clearly can't do it with just three. How do you
Yeah.
manage that?
Well, so we try and work with the staff that have that knowledge, the staff that are based in that country, the
Hmm.
staff that support the staff based in that country. We have a number of people who've been in the international development field for many, many years, have a lot of experience living in many of these different countries. Um, I mean, the short answer is you have to go out and ask and ask and ask and ask again. Uh, something that I've found and that I'm still somewhat surprised by is how little people will volunteer to you. You
Mm.
really do have to go out and ask. I mean, you could design a training that's just completely tone deaf, and you won't know unless you're really, pressing for that feedback.
That's an
Um,
interesting experience. I wonder why you think uh, that people aren't more forthcoming. Do you think that they don't have an expectation that it can be more culturally sensitive?
I think so. I think it's a combination of factors. I think there's that. I think in some places and at times we are working against, uh, sort of the general sense that we're corporate and that
Mm.
we don't care about the little guy or the people on the ground. Sometimes um, people are just busy too. Also, I mean, if you think just any time that you've watched a tutorial video or something and felt like, oh, this isn't great, it takes extra moments for you to then put in writing why it wasn't great.
No, it's a
You
really good,
So
good.
chances are you just sort of think it to yourself, maybe you say it to the person next to you, and that's as far as it goes.
It occurs to me that everyone in L&D is challenged by this, because even if you're rolling something out across the United States, there's cultural differences. Yours is just exacerbated by it's bigger. You have
Mhm.
a bigger set of problems, but probably not completely different than
Oh
what other
no,
people would face.
no,
And you're,
absolutely, yeah. And the sort of the way that everything we were just talking about, sort of going out and really pushing for feedback. I mean, that's sort of a basic adult learning principle of trying to involve the learner and give them a sense of ownership and responsibility and agency. So yeah, no, I don't think it's necessarily different, but I think the fact that we know we work in all these countries really
mhm.
make sure that we don't forget.
And maybe in some ways that's an advantage because you have an expectation that you need to deal with these differences and potentially in US people don't. So I'm really curious, has there been something that really surprised you, really, that you would never expect that it would be culturally insensitive, or just something that worked or didn't work that really took you by surprise?
I mean, I can remember this is sort of less about training design, but just sort of about the sort of the technicalities of the things that we roll out. There was a time when we really needed people to sort of one of these certification course things, and we were trying to get people to enter basic demographic information,
Hmm.
full name, address, birth date. Now, all of those fields are challenging. Just even just something like you think like, oh, first and last name, right? Not every country has first and last names. So that was a challenge. Address also, for a lot of the people we're working with, that don't really have that kind of structured system of addresses that you might be used to in the US. But then the thing that really surprised me is that people were refusing to give their birthday.
Mm.
They wouldn't do it. Because in some of the countries in which we work, I think the particular issue is in Uganda, there's just such a strong age discrimination is such a major issue that people will really go to great lengths not to divulge their age, and kind of came back to us and said, you're not going to be the one to give you your birthday. You got to take that off.
So you just took it off?
In that case, we were able to remove that.
Yeah. How interesting and unexpected, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I dealt with foreign addresses, and it was basically turn left at the White House. How do you structure that? See, it's quite interesting.